right, so we're going to start some examples going the other direction. All right, so in the first video, we were starting with a decimal and we were converting to a fraction. Now we're starting with a fraction with a denominator that's got a 1 and some zeros on it, and we're going back to a decimal. All right, so this is how it's done. We firstly look at the denominator, the bottom number, 10. So we're going to leave some space above it, and then down the bottom we're going to write 10. 1, 0. Now I've spaced it out a little bit because I want to be able to fit things in where they go, and you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so there's the 10 that comes from here. So now I'm going to put a decimal point above the 1. So there's my decimal point. Now, what this tells you is that our number has to finish there. Alright, so we've got one spot to fill here. Alright, so now we look at the top number, and the top number says 9. And I've said in the notes before, in the last video, that we start filling them in from here. Well, there's only really one digit, so that 9 just has to go in that spot. Okay, so what you've done is created a decimal. Here it is, it's 0.9. So our answer is 0.9. You can write it like that in a test and it'll be fine. Just make sure the decimal point is really clear. But some people like to put a 0 before it. That's up to you. And that's your answer. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Now the next one's decided to put words in here. We don't like words very much in maths, so we're going to change those words into numbers. So tenths, 4 tenths, we write that as 4 tenths, tells you it's a part of something. That's on the bottom, so it's tenths. This bit here tells you we have a 10 on the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to look at our fraction and do what we did before. So we're going to leave some space above it. We're going to come down the bottom, and first thing we do is look at that bottom number. The bottom number is 10, so I'm going to write a 1 and a 0 for 10. Okay? Now the next thing we do is put the decimal point above the 1. Okay, now at that point, you're now looking at the top number, right? So the top number is 4. So remember, our numbers are finishing here, so we're going to have one spot to fill, and we've only got one digit. It's a 4. So we're going to put it in there. Then we come over here. This is our answer here. Right, that's the answer. So we come over here, we write 0.4, and that's fine for an answer. If you want to put the 0 in front of it, you can. And that's your answer. All right, let's look at the next one. So this time we're looking at the bottom number, and it's 1,000. So we'll leave some space above it. We'll put 1, 0, 0, 0. That's our bottom number. Now we're going to put our decimal point above our 1. And this time we've got 3 spaces to fill in for those 3 zeros. So we've got to look up the top here, we've got 704. Now I've told you in the notes to fill in from the end. There's a reason for that, which you'll see in a minute on some of the other questions. So I'm going to put in my 704, but I'm going to start at the end and work backwards. Okay, so I'm going to put my 4 in first, then my 0 in front, and then my 7. So my answer for this question is just this bit here, 0.704. Again, if you want to put a 0 in before it, you can. That's up to you. Let's look at the next one. So we have on the bottom 1,000 again. So leave some space above it. We'll put 1, 0, 0, 0. Put a decimal point above the 1. And we've got to fill in 3 spaces here above these zeros. And this is what we're filling in, and we're going to work backwards. So we're going to put the 8 here, the 6 in front, and the 3 in front. And your answer is 0.368. If you feel like putting the 0 in front, you can. That's up to you. All right, now this is where it gets a bit more difficult, and you'll see the reason why I've been working backwards. Okay, so we're looking at our bottom number, 10,000. Leave a space above. Spread this out a little bit. Okay, decimal point goes above the 1. And we're filling in from the end. So let's look at the 23, and we're going backwards. So we're going to put let me just fill in these spaces above the 0 so we can see what we're doing. So the 3 is going to go in here at the end. The 2 goes in front of it. Now in this question you'll notice we haven't filled up all these spaces. That's why I want you to start at the end here, because it doesn't fill them all up, and when that happens we're going to put zeros in those positions. So just get your red pen and fill in the zeros. So now your answer is 0.0023. Make the point really clear so that your teacher can see it, all right, and anybody marking it can see it. If you want to put the 0 in before it, you can, but that's fine what I've written. All right, so let's look at a couple of other harder questions. So we've got this one is a mixed numeral. It's got a whole number and a fraction. That's called a mixed numeral. So when we're doing this one, we're still going to do it the same way. Look at your denominator, it's 100. Now I'm just going to move over here for this one, just so we can see what we're doing. 100. Put your decimal point above the 1. And here's our spaces we have to fill. And our number that we're filling is just a 9, right? So you're starting at the end, remember? So we put the 9 in. And we've still got a blank space there. That's where your 0 fills in. Put it in with your red pen so you can see we put that in. Now, this 4 at the beginning, that's a whole number. All whole numbers go in front of the decimal point. So we're just going to drag that down and put it in front of the decimal point. And now you have your answer, 4.09. Okay, one more question. We have in words 45 thousandths. You can see the word thousand there. So it's telling you that your fraction has 1,000 on the bottom, thousandths. Okay, so we're going to do what we did before. Look at your denominator first. We're going to leave a space above, put the 1,000 down. Decimal point goes above the 1. We're filling in spaces here. Start at the end. So remember we're going backwards. So we're going to put the 5 in the last spot, 4 in before it, and we've got an empty space, so we're going to get our red pen and put a 0 in there. So that's our answer, 0.045. If you want to put a 0 in before it, you can, up to you. All right, now we're going on to a couple of other questions. Now, you might remember these from primary school, okay, and some of you might have been great at them and others were not quite so sure. So it says, what part of the shape has been shaded? Now, I've just drawn these really roughly, but we're going to assume that all these little squares are the same. And down here, we're going to assume that all these little triangles are the same. Okay, so the first part wants you to write the shaded part as a fraction. So we're going to look at seeing how many squares have been shaded. Count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to have 5 on the top of our fraction. Then we're going to count all the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares all together, and write that down. Now, you could simplify this fraction if you wanted to and write it down as 1/2. But that's not going to help us get to part 2. You'll notice they haven't asked you for a fraction in simplest form. So in a test, they'll mark both of these as right. So you don't need to go to there unless they ask for it to be simplified or simplest. Okay, so 5/10 is fine. All right, now, in part 2, we're going to take this to a decimal. So we're going to do what we did a minute ago. I'm going to look at that denominator, write it down, leave a bit of space above it. We're going to put a decimal point above the 1. Now let's look at what we're filling in. We've got 1 space to fill in, and we've only got one number of 5 up there, so there's no blank spaces, so we're all good. So our answer there is just 0.5. If you want to put the 0 in before it, you can. All right, so you'll see why I didn't really want to simplify it to a half, because I wouldn't have been able to do this then. All right, so it's easier if we had have left it. All right, now in the second one, assuming all those triangles are the same size, let's count up how many we've shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 triangles. Now again, we could simplify that. If I divide the top and the bottom by 2, it would actually end up being 2 over 5, but you don't have to because they didn't ask for it. All right, now part 2. We're going to look at our denominator again, leave a space above it, write the 10 down, decimal point above the 1, and we have 1 space to fill in. Look at the top, and you've got a 4, so the 4 goes in that spot, and your final answer for your decimal is 0.4. Again, if you want to write the 0 in front, you can if you like. Okay, so try these for homework. We're going to be doing them with no calculator today. So I want you to do the working I've just shown you in both these videos to do it with no calculator. Okay, good luck with your work.